do, let's start our hui meeting with the karakia, and Linda, would you like to share your karakia with us?
Tēnā. Whakataka te reo ki te oru, whakataka te pau ki te tonga. Kia makina ki ata, kia mataratara ki tai. I ai he aki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, tihe mōhiora. Quite appropriate, I felt for opening this morning's meeting. The English meaning was, seesaw winds of the west and of the south. Let the bracing breezes blow over the land and sea. Let the red-tipped dawn come in a sharpened edge, a touch of a promise of a glorious day.
Well, we've got more than a touch of a glorious day. I think it's more than a touch. It's probably embraced us. So thank you, Linda. Welcome to all of my members of the public. Great to see you. Rod, thanks for you and the work that you do here in the community of Wānaka. I don't think we've got nobody here today, but staff, there's a variety of staff that will be speaking to us during our meeting, so we look forward to welcoming you up to the table as well. Michelle Morse is here as the QLDC Executive Leadership Team Representative. Michelle is General Manager of Strategy and Policy. Welcome to you. Good to see you, Michelle. And Quinton is joining us. Quinton's not on the community board, but he is here by my invitation. And thanks for your report. Thanks, listener. We have one apology, which is Councillor Tucker. He's overseas at the moment. Do I have any leave of absence requests over the next 6 weeks? Very good, we're already here, which is fantastic. I will then move that. Do I need to move that Cody and apology be accepted? I move that Cody and apology be accepted. Can you second that? All those in favour? Carried. Very good. We've got our agenda, which has been circulated to members at least a week in advance. Is there any declarations of conflicts of interest regarding any matters that are on the agenda today? Fantastic. No resolution required if there was. Matters lying on the table, we're none at the moment. We didn't carry anything over from previous meetings, so we're into the new stuff. One of the things we look forward to is engaging with members of the public, and today we've got one person presenting at the public forum, and then we will have one written statement as well. So Andrew, would you like to join us up here, and looking forward to your sharing your thoughts around QLDC planning and affordable housing.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks.
Well, committee board members and council, I refer to my circulated comments to all councillors early in January and subsequently to yourselves just recently regarding the perennial problem of the lack of affordable housing in the district. Specifically, it's an ongoing and long-standing problem, as we all know. And although our biggest industry, certainly in the Wānaka area, is building houses, and yet it's patently obvious that it's not the type of houses that might cater to the middle to lower end of the market. A large proportion of these houses, in fact, that are being built are second homes which will remain empty for most of the year. So we have this problem, and it is getting worse, and I realise that the community board does not hold the power to change council policies over housing planning and development, but it is in a position, I feel, to initiate and facilitate discussion on matters affecting the Wānaka and the Upper Clutha communities. And this issue of unaffordable housing is surely one such issue. I, and I'm sure many others within the community, would like to see some change from the status quo, which is really watching while the problem gets worse. I therefore ask for a response from community board members to the 4 questions which I supplied to each of you, and could I ask the Chair to now seek some responses from the table to these questions.
Now, I'm also conscious that we don't go traverse too far into the district plan because you have been submitted as a district plan as well. So James is going to monitor that, but you're welcome to pose questions and we'll see how far we get through them.
Okay, well, I guess given the time limitations of my comments here, the bottom line is, given that the current council policies and practices have not made any material change to things and we've observed it getting worse and worse, would you support, will there be support for the community board to initiate and facilitate community-wide discussion with a view towards collating and presenting a submission to council on new initiatives to progressively respond to this issue in a more positive way than what we have had in the past, and hopefully produce some positive change?
Lyle, what do you think? You across the side. What do you think the community board's role is as a community board versus council around promoting the affordability, housing affordability within the ward?
Well, it does affect the ward, so I don't see any reason why the community board shouldn't be talking with its members or communities on this and getting ideas. But there have been plenty of opportunities for proposals to be put through. I'm not too sure exactly what you've seen. I've seen your emails on that, but in the full project, I think Michelle, you might ask better me, you're in policy. But, I put as a community board chair and everything, I'd support the community board. Listening to the community, and any ideas come through, maybe forwarding them through to council. But I don't think it would be hard as a whole community board to vote on something on a particular point. It's just like submissions to the RMA, because we represent the whole of the community, and so you've got to balance that up with how we advocate versus how we make decisions and put them through formally.
Michelle, would you like to just, what's the best thing you think the community board would do to help influence housing affordability in the ward?
I think we're always really open to further conversations around some of these key challenges. I would just draw your attention to the Joint Housing Action Plan, which was consulted on quite broadly last year as an output of the spatial plan. The spatial plan is very, very conservative. We've chased down a number of routes through the Resource Management Act, and some doors have been closed on us at the court level to making some of the changes we've proposed. And obviously we've got the inclusionary zoning section of the district plan that's been out for consultation recently. So there have been a number of touch points, but I think that if there is a perceived gap in the conversation, then there's no harm at all in continuing that debate. It's a challenge that is complex, and there's lots of actors in this space that need to play a role. So the more that we can keep that conversation alive, and I think thoughts are good.
We've got time for one more. What do you think is the biggest thing that the community board could be doing, in your opinion, Andrew, to advance affordable housing in the district?
Well, I think that we are lacking in new ideas to deal with the problem. There has surely got to be something more that we could be doing, and I think it's up to the community to, first of all, express some viewpoint via a public meeting perhaps, to express concern for the problem, and maybe look to them to come up with some new ideas. Because right now, whilst acknowledging the council has made some efforts, some of which I think are going to have some small impact, like, for example, the contribution towards the housing trust from developed leagues. But basically, that's not going to be enough. We need, and are we accepting of this ongoing problem getting worse and worse and worse? Or do we look for some new ideas, and that's going to come, I feel, from the community?
Thanks. Point well made. We are certainly open to that, and I think we've now got the encouragement to do that. I suppose what we now need is those new ideas that haven't sort of gone around the houses before to be put forward. And if you want to be the conduit for some of those, we'll welcome to hear from you again via email or via another public forum. Okay. 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Thank you. The Neville Harris was going to present today, but he is unwell, and I did say that I would read on behalf of Neville, or I'll give a synopsis. So Neville Harris wanted to speak to the new tiles on stage 2. Neville was disappointed because he had proposed 2 new tiles that his family were going to sponsor, that focused on his mother's prowess in golfing and his lifetime membership of the Wānaka Golf Club. So that was what he was going to present on. I said I would share that and pass that on to staff. He also noted that some of the new tiles had cracked, but hadn't had any photographic evidence to sort of show me of that, so I wasn't able to validate that, but Neville was going to speak on that. So I'm going to pass on to staff his disappointment that a couple of historic tiles didn't reflect some of the family prowess there, and for us to look at any of the tiles. Did I use any of the tiles cracked at all? So
I've had some discussions with the project manager about that, and they're monitoring some of the things over the winter. It's still within its deep experience. So
have you seen the cracked tile? Yep. Okay. Do you know how many roughly?
6.
Okay. Good. So
They're
staff.
joints, and the joints have since been reinforced. The extension joints have since been reinforced, but working through.
Great. Okay. So staff on top of that at the moment. Fantastic. Very good. That is the public forum. Thank you for this contribution. The agenda has been circulated. Would anyone like to make an additional alteration to the agenda? Okay, and because it's reasonably pro forma, I'll move that the agenda be accepted in its current state. Any second around that? Okay, we'll put Linda for seconding. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Proclamation of minutes. We had our last meeting on the 30th of November. We're now into 2024. Has everyone had a chance to read through those minutes of those who attended? Has anyone got any changes that they wanted to note regarding the accuracy of those minutes? Would anyone like to move that those minutes be accepted from the 23rd, for the 30th, from the 30th of November? John, anyone seconding that? Chris is going to second that. All those in favour of proclamation of the last minutes? All those in favour? Anyone against? All carried as well. Very good. Let's get into the substantive stuff, and I think we are going to have Kim. You're going to come up and speak with us, Kim. Hayden, you're going as well. We have an application, as we always do at this time of year, for some road closures around the A&P show, as we know. Thanks, team. You've put your bit of work into that. Thank you. Is there anything you want to add to the paper? No. Nothing new? Very good. Okay, we'll take that as being read. Any comments around the request for road closures for the A&P show for 2024?
I think comment that in the discussion, in the debrief of the last year's one, the traffic management would need to include some protection of particularly the stage 2 lakefront from parking on the path and the grass there. So while it's not directly related to the road closure, it is related to the traffic management plan.
I think in the past that certainly on it was certainly, we all know, because most of us were down there at 6 a.m. on that second morning protecting everything down there, and we still feel slightly frustrated around that. So maybe that could be communicated that as part of that road closure there is making sure that access onto, say, to the lakefront development is made as difficult as possible.
Sure. I can pass it on to the traffic management.
Thank you, Bob.
Through the chair, just a question on the park and ride. You mentioned in paragraph 7 there that the Stone Street one, I thought we were looking also at a temporary one out by the dock car park on the main road. Is that still happening or not?
I believe so, but that was provided by the event organisers themselves and the safety team that they have. We can only put it in as a condition, but I can clarify that with them to double check.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle?
I've just got a briefing before this session that is the intention of the
itself, which is consistent, I think, with previous years. Very good. Okay. Would anyone like to move that the temporary road project application for the Wānaka A and B show 2024 be accepted? Very moving that. Anyone want to second that?
Second.
I'm going to second that. So, as I've already got a motion, all those in favour? Anyone against? We're carried. Kim, I know you're a month into your career with QLDC, and I'm really sorry that the high point of your career has happened in the first month. And I know for now it's all going to take over, and I wish you the luck in this new career. You should be back.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Okay. The adoption of the small park and Peninsula Bay Reserve Development Plan is a lot of work that's gone into it. It does a lot of work. Jess is over today, so Jackie, you're going to speak to that. I'm not sure if you're going to be joined by anyone else. Dave, you can take a stand as well. So this is, and we're going to break this up into two. We're going to start with Peninsula Bay, actually. So Reserve Development Plan, a lot of work's gone in, a lot of consultation. I think that we're in a reasonable position now, and what we're going to do is discuss and then move through if we're in agreement to adopt those development plans. So let's start with Peninsula Bay. Quentin, any comments around Peninsula Bay?
Only that development plans are sometimes a funny name for these things, because sometimes they're the opposite of that they're not development and they're not resulting in a program of works. Now, this one particularly, I was there when it was sort of kicked off, was really to resolve an agreed direction on access, the tracks trust and bike tracks and also protected areas for vegetation and enhancement and stuff like that. So, it's not, it was really to resolve that point, give a clear touch point as to what is acceptable or agreed on the reserve and, how the access will be managed. So, while other things can get complicated, that was the driver of this, and we're not proposing substantive changes to the reserve in terms of developing it, we're just setting a direction.
I remember being at that meeting on that Saturday afternoon down at
it was at 30 residents or something.
Yes,
at the intersection.
When that's what was the catalyst for this. Barry.
I'm perhaps going to comment on the Lisbon patch. I think that
We'll just take a feedback now. We'll just do feedback at the moment.
okay, well, I'll pass on that one.
Cool, that's cool. We'll come back to this one.
Yeah, again, I was involved quite early with this process. The key thing was looking more than developing it. This was a case of identifying and clarifying the existing uses and then seeing how we could provide an access level that was for a broader range of people connecting through the existing tracks on the lakefront to the existing tracks and the subdivision nearby. And the route that's shown is indicative. It's not the definite route that will be chosen if it's approved to avoid any ecological areas wherever possible. So the idea was to clarify what existing use was, see how we could actually just make that use available for more people without causing conflict with existing use. So I'm quite pleased with the outcome.
Fantastic. Something else to speak about. I think it's a good pragmatic solution that it achieves that purpose of giving clarity to all users as to where we're heading, and I don't think it's been over-engineered at all. So I think it's pragmatic, and I appreciate the consultation and so on through particularly the Penn Bay side of things. Lon?
Nothing on the Peninsula Bay, but I've got a bit on the Lisbon partnership.
Yes, Linda.
I just feel there is a little confusion for me. Ken's comment was this is a very high level concept, and the title is a development plan, and I just would like some clarification as it moves through more detail. It feels very light ecologically, and culturally in lots of aspects. Significant species of plants are within the Peninsula Bay area, and it's just, is there going to be another opportunity that it comes back to the community board with more in-depth ecological and cultural narrative? Or is there the possibility that this doesn't come back if it's approved today by the community board and adopted, that it then becomes a project that we don't get involved with again?
Thank you, Chair. You're right, high level is sort of a guidance, and the development plan doesn't show, specific grades and trails, for example, or exact detailed design if we were to build a new arrival node. When we went out for tender with this development plan, we did originally include the assessment of ecological values and potential. We actually removed that in that process because to recognise that a development plan is not an ecological enhancement plan. That would be quite a separate technical document written by an ecologist setting out exactly not just the plant palette, for example, but specific what exactly zone where those plants come from, the eco-source, and then use protection around those as well. So that is the intention with this plan. This is adopted to sort of demonstrate, as Councillor Smith said, it's around us agreeing to the direction of this reserve, particularly around protection. So it's actually not about development, it's actually about protection of this particular reserve, given its qualities and its values. Would we bring back an ecological enhancement plan to community board? I don't see why we couldn't. It is a technical document, so it is sort of like officers, we don't have as much input, we're not qualified ecologists, and then that obviously also comes down to the next stages of funding as well. Where does funding come from to produce those technical plans and then implement them?
I guess fundamentally it comes down to what leads the project and what drives the project, and if it's about cycleways and pedestrian ways, that's a completely different approach to what. Where I feel it's lacking is an integrity of both cultural heritage, understanding what trails were there historically, what they related to, identifying how we were going to reuse those, and significantly more the species of endangered plants that are on that peninsula. Before, I think those principles and values in this day and age kind of lead projects in that way rather than be driven by activities. And so for me, I would feel more comfortable knowing that as this would progress, not necessarily be driven by funding to have an ecological aspect to it. It's more about how it will be driven forward. Will it come back to community board to, again, align with ourselves that we're comfortable with the principles and values that are driving it?
I don't think that's going to happen, to be perfectly honest. I think that development plan is done. So, you want to dance around it and say, well, maybe, but I can't see. I think that was the basis of which this development plan was undertaken. Not saying it's right or wrong, but I don't think we're going to sort of be relitigating some of those more fundamental principle approach until the development plan has been done again. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Can I just add to that? I think that, those issues are primarily resolved through the project assessment, when the projects are undertaken. So the operational, the parks team will assess whether those, is it crossing through, is there other injuries, bushes that need to be removed, is there drainage issues, whatever it is that, occurs when the project is delivered, and those decisions you can't preempt all those things at this level. We have to, allow those things to work through at the time. They, doesn't mean they're not considered, and they are important issues to consider, but, we let those stand involved when the projects come forward. So.
Yeah, I can just talk to that as well. So with a reserve like this, and I was involved back in the plan change quite a long time ago now, and it has got such high ecological values that will be front and centre when development of trails are coming to the table.
It doesn't actually state that in the stock plan. You just worded it beautifully, but it's actually not in the stock plan. It just refers them to kind of Wānaka and a bit of scrubland. So, you know, that's where my concern lies. It's just in adopting this, if it doesn't come back with those details and it gets driven by pathways and active travel pathways and sports and where we're going with things instead of actually where we've come from and understanding that before we go forward, I just feel it's a tricky one because we could just suddenly be altering aspects of that without consideration to those principles and values of ecology and culture.
Chris?
I think the development plan, if that's what we want to call it, is good in that it's formalising something, if you like, that's at the moment being very ad hoc, and it'll just provide the community with more information about what they can and can't do and where they can and can't do it. And I think the basis of it is great.
Okay. So we've gone around the table and there's raised some observations which I think have been acknowledged and received. So the question is if anyone wants to move a motion that we adopt the Peninsula Bay Reserve Development Plan, or whether it's included move with amendment. I'll get guidance from the elected members.
Well, I agree we should handle them separately. So, yeah.
So we'd like to move the Peninsula Bay Reserve Development Plan be adopted.
Yeah, it's things moving.
Yeah, so we're welcome for the guidance really well.
I'll move.
Anyone like to second?
I'll second.
Just for clarity, I would suggest that somebody move item 1 and item 3, because the first one's open report, which we've got, and the third one's adopted that development plan, and then come back to.
Okay, agreed. So, Lyle, can I take it that you're moving to note the contents of this report and number 3 to adopt the Peninsula Bay Reserve Development Plan?
Yes.
You're seconding that, John? Yes. All those in favour? Anyone against? Members against? Motion carried. Fantastic, thank you. Let's move on to Lismore Park, the Reserve Development Plan for that. We'll go through the same process, we'll go the way. Chris, would you like to do anything else? I assume that we don't want anything else other than what's tabled at the moment for Lismore Park?
Really, I just would like to know those comments and that as a team or just as we make note of the desire to engage with the ecological aspect of it.
It'd be nice to be showing progress, should we say.
Be nice to what, sir?
Be showing the progress as you go through.
Moving on to Lismore Park, Chris, what's, having read the plan, any comments or observations?
It's interesting because having lived quite close to Lismore Park the time I've been in Wānaka, from my perspective, apart from a way of getting from one side of, from getting from the school down to town, that sort of thing, in general, it's never really served the purpose that a lot of people seem to think it should, which is an open space for families to go and have a picnic. I don't think I've ever seen anyone sitting on a rain. So the fact that we are actually looking at progressing this, and there's been comments about the disc golf and that sort of thing, but having more people there doing various things, and I don't see disc golf as a particularly interruptive sport. I think it's a great idea that we're doing something that hopefully will attract people, if not to sit on a blanket, at least to know that it's there and that they can recreate on it.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, most of the time that I live in St. Becky, that's kind of, it's just people walking through it, using it as a pathway. That's about it, apart from disc golf and some people on a bike or two.
Yes.
So I think anything that we do to enhance it will be great.
Right. And it is a recreation reserve, so that is its core purpose. Linda, Lismore Park.
I guess, for me, similar things apply with Lismore as well. I feel we kind of have lost a little bit of an opportunity to plan for something more significant for Lismore. I just was interested to sort of understand the lease arrangements with the likes of the disc golf. Is that something that comes up for lease agreement at a certain time? Is that something that has got a 25-year lease to use that space as a disc golf course, or does that not happen if we?
Yeah, I'm just sorry, just say as well, Jess gives her apologies, she's actually sick today, so I'll do my best to answer the questions on a couple of reports today. As I understand it, disc golf has a licence, and that yes, they do, licences aren't usually as long as leases, so I would imagine it's sort of a 3 by 3 by 3, so like a 9 or 10-year licence, and they do come up for renewal. The position with licences is that they do, depending on how you look at it, enhance the reserve, because any member of the public can come along and use it, as opposed to like a lease for the rugby clubs, for example, where you have to hire them and you double up to the public, usually it's exclusive use. So yes, they do come up for renewal. I don't know exactly when it would be, but and it would be in the realm of about 10 years, I expect.
Yeah, I guess I like the idea, as Chris says, at least it gets people out into the park spaces and it's being used, and it's similar, I guess, with the pump. Does that come, do the public consult on any of those sort of licences and agreements, or there seemed to be a section of the community that felt negative towards the disc golf activities, and whether that was actually something that we thought about in the redesign aspect or the development plan or this concept plan. Was there other opportunities to maybe do something more community driven?
So just with regards to those leases and licences and the bike jump park as well, so this is where the reserve management plan comes in, and it is a reserve management plan that covers a number of central Wānaka reserves, and off the top of my head, it should have a provision in there for disc golf.
It does.
And for a jump park, so a new licence doesn't need to be publicly notified if it's not anticipated in their management plan, which is more about what types of activities are appropriate on certain reserves as opposed to the physical redevelopment of them. Then that's the public's opportunity to participate in that process. But it's not in the management plan, and it does need to be fully notified licence. So I presume both jump park and the disc golf are covered off, or they would have been notified at the time.
The reserve management plan 29 says the retained as of the nature of the park, with the exception of biking activities, disc golf, and its use by local schools for local and recreational use. Linda?
I guess it's all my questions. With the removal of the pines, is my other one, just that with the removal of the pines, does the allocation of your tree policy then adopt into the replacement of 2-for-1 indigenous tree species will come into Lismore?
It will if they're not wildling conifers or not just weeds, and it doesn't. The tree policy doesn't specify native; it's 2-for-1, so whatever appropriate trees for the setting.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge the staff and optimism all the work that's gone into this plan. With respect, I do have to actually question the cost benefit of the whole process, considering when we started and what we've just been talking about and where we're heading. Because we start with a reserve management plan, we just talked about it. We've got one there. It was updated, I think, in 2019. That's when they had full consultation on frisbee golf, and we've got those things there. So what we've got up there already, before we started this process, we had disc golf approved. We've got a bike park approved. We've got a new school pool path going through the park. And then out of this process, if you look on page 43 of the map, what we get is some toilets, an upgrade to the eastern track, which was what we wanted, maybe a perimeter path around, formalising this area that the school already used, and I'm not sure whether the school was actually consulted in this process, but we all agreed on that. So what I'm getting at is those things, I'm sure we could have approved some toilets on this park and these other things without going through this whole process. Putting that aside, we've got this process now. One of the things that came through from the consultation way back when the first reserve management plan was put together, based on the landscape character of this whole reserve, the updates, the consultation during the update of the reserve management plan, and when the debate with the Frisbee Golf about how that was going to interact with the general community, the big point there was to keep the park as an open space. And so now we've got in this plan, the only thing that I've talked about it as we've produced this plan, is areas, great areas identified for planting, native planting, which goes right against, contradicts the push for keeping this an open space. There are plenty of reserves in our area, in the Upper Clutha area, and even on this reserve, above the trees there, for planting native trees, without restricting the open space use. So I go up there all the time. The Frisbee golf players are playing, it's good, we walk around it, but we've got room to go around, and that was talked about when they did the consultation with the Frisbee golf people. We've got to interact. They pushed it as a passive exercise activity. There's controversy whether that's passive or active, but hey, it works all right at the moment. I'm all for Frisbee golf, all for the use. But I'm not a fan of the whole of planting up there that will restrict the open space. And the landscape character, as you point out in this report, how that land was formed years and years ago, I don't believe there was any evidence in native planting or growth on that hill. The other thing I've got to look about, if we start implementing this thing, in the advantages, you mentioned, to implement the Lismore Park management plan, no funding will be required. I just don't understand how you can actually say that. It says funding will not be required to implement the Lismore Park development plan. Now, how can we put toilets in there, upgrade the path on the eastern side, and do some of the small things without some funding? So I question that, and while we leave that planting in there and restricting the open space of the Lismore Park, I won't support the option of it. The other thing about it, if we do plant on that, we've got to look at the implementation costs. Now, it costs money to plant, then to maintain it. We're up there in the middle of a dry area. You know how hard it was when I wanted to plant some out at Albertown, and now it's the rodeo club for water to do the planting. Well, how are we going to manage it on Lismore Park? So we've got to be very mindful of what we commit to our operational plan, especially in these tight time fiscal budgets. So we've got to be very careful what we put into these plans, and then we raise expectations of the community, both good and bad. And so I think we've got to be very careful what we put into this one.
What's the figure in planting? I mean, I know it's not your baby, so you were involved in it, so you went into it, and Dave, you probably came halfway to maybe have a good process. Any thoughts on responding to Nigel?
Yeah, I can talk generally to that, but I can also just comment on that funding of implementation as well. I guess a lot of it is around succession of trees that are there, trees have a lifespan. We see it in some of our other reserves, they get to the point, they get to the end of their lifespan, and we need a vision for how we're going to replace those, but acknowledge that this proposes planting in new spaces as well. So that they do cost to plant and establish, and we also often with our tree policy we're looking for spaces to replace that tree canopy, so there's opportunities to do that. And I think there is the new plantings that are of suitable species can be seen to enhance open spaces as well as detract from the actual open space. So I note that some of that planting was removed through the iterations of the development plan to retain more of that open space. But
I just keep referring to that map. The western end, the eastern end, you've got up number 6 there, there's some planting going on, maybe up adjacent to Plantation Road, just before the school, and all that stuff down to the west. There are some trees down there, I know, but there's a lot of those areas are open at the moment, and that's the ideal place to keep away from the Frisbee golf, take the dog for a walk. I know we don't see many people sitting on the blankets up there in picnics, but every time I go up there, I think so thank you.
I want to just comment as well, plus I've got a question around the funding that's not required to implement the development plan. I think that might be a typo. It's because the resolution in front of you is to adopt the plan, not to implement it, so I think that they should say funding is not required to adopt the development plan. Funding will be required to implement it.
Mr. Chair, once again, I get back to expectations, and once you start putting this on the table, and that's why I keep going back to the reserve management plan. It's a very good document, it's got a will there, and then you start tweaking with it outside that process.
Can I just talk really briefly to that too? So, in order to implement reserve management plans, development plans are a really important part of that, because they form part of our business case into the end plan and the long-term plan. Without that, then the reserve won't have any improvements or upgrades spent on it typically.
Give you a sense, if we pass this development plan, there's some big projects in here. They are expensive projects. I would suggest that some of them are community-led projects. Will the community board have, say for instance, Parks team decide that it would be really good to enact the development plan and part those sections out? Is it something that would need to come back to the community board, or would we see it through, because we probably wouldn't see it in any planning, obviously a line item and stuff like that. So, toilets, those sorts of things, can you give us a sense, because I don't think we've got, as this community board, passed our development plan and then sort of see the process for the implementation of it.
I can comment initially, I think it comes back to
That's exactly
so the Wānaka lakefront redevelopment began with the development plan, and all of the detailed designs all come back, many times to the community board by workshops. So I don't see the reason why it can't, and I guess there needs to be a level of appropriateness in terms of progressing efficiency and progressing the work. But Dave, did you want to?
No, I was just going to say what you were going to say. There'd be an opportunity to come back on certain items, but it depends on what the item was, obviously.
Okay, Dave, since you're leading this team, would the mass planting of the western edge of the plantation, those major copses of trees, would that come within that, or would you see that as operational and just happen, or would that come back as a substantive piece of work?
Hearing the comments today, I'd probably lean on the side of bringing it back to get comment. Just bring to the feedback today.
So just a well comment, because I think the development plan allows it, it doesn't mandate it, or actually make it actually happen.
Right. Mr. Chair, let's clarify. This was an example. Let's just talk about toilets. You say we can't do anything on this without a development plan. Now we're about to put, you've got a line in the annual plan for toilets, new toilets and replacement toilets. Now we're about to put toilets out at North Lake, which I presume that's a reserve area. Well, it's definitely a grass area. We haven't got a development plan for that part of grass, but we're putting toilets here. So I don't understand why we couldn't put toilets here without a development plan.
It's not that you can't, it's just that, in terms of the pathway, planning through to project implementation, we want to have a vision for that reserve and realise that vision through this collaborative process. North Lake, obviously, much newer reserves, and ideally we maybe would have done a reserve management plan or a development plan for that, but that's probably reflective of the growth pressure and the fact that the whole new community has sprung up in the last 5 years. So that's about efficiency. They need a toilet, so we'll put a toilet in. Perhaps there's not conflicting uses as there with the case with particularly Peninsula Bay and Lismore Park. There are pressures on those reserves because of the surrounding development and the growth, that a decision needs to be made on what's appropriate and what's not. Whereas I can't really comment particularly on North Lake, but if there's a clearly identified need for a toilet and it doesn't conflict with anything else, then you should be able to go and sort it.
Can I just make one? Just one idea. I guess with the difference maybe between the two reserves, North Lake's got a quite clear visitor use type, and the toilet's kind of in line with that. Whereas Lismore, where we actually determine maybe what direction it might be used in terms of visiting.
One's a community park, one's a community park, one's an informal recreation park as well. So they do.
The the microphone now, but one comment. But I think there's a difference in complexity too. A Lismore Park is just more like competing interests and we already placed anything else like that. As far as the Lismore Park development plan goes, since I'm next in the circle, I really like it. I'm particularly become warmed even more to the Wānaka site, that learning site outside the school, and formalising that. I can really see that being an extension of the school and for outdoor learning and formalisation there. I would note, and I think it was really remiss, and I've had it from the members of the public talk to me about it, is that Downswine College was not a key stakeholder that was consulted. I can't see how that was slipped through. You know, they are adjacent to it. We started talking about an outdoor learning space. I think they should be consulted. So that was one part. The other thing is that we do mention parkour, which is that urban style of risk-taking and playing for youth. And I just want to make sure, because I've had these organisation, that when we talk about parkour, I would just like that to be noted, that means sort of a broader adventure playground concept. Parkour is quite narrow, it's blocks and it's concrete and it resembles, it reflects the urban form, as if kids are downtown, so jumping over stuff. So parkour is quite narrow. I just want to make sure that we broaden it out. And so part of that learning and risk-taking and free activity for youth will can include some form of adventure-based activity, of which parkour is one aspect of that, but it may be a more traditional adventure playground. Okay. We just use a specific term now. I want to make sure that it's on the record that we've ruled that out. I think it's pragmatic about parking around the reserve, formalising that, and using road reserve, and a bit of a reserve where it's needed. And I don't think it has been over-engineered. I think it's pragmatic. And I am also very conscious, having been through the ED point, thing about setting expectations, and we did the ED point development plan, and nothing has happened in the last 3 or 4 years, relatively, at ED point, that we've got it here. I do believe a lot of this will be community driven, and that's where the community empowerment fund that we are trying to set up, but probably having a bit of resistance from the staff around that, is that I can see that community empowerment fund being a huge catalyst for some of these things, particularly the Wānaka space, particularly the toilets, particularly any extension of the biking activities around there. John?
Yeah, just want to clarify, in terms of those planting areas shown in the western end, can I assume that those are, the copses that Lara was concerned about, can we confirm that that's the area that we propose is suitable for it, should it happen, rather than actually committing that we will be doing those plantings in those areas? So are we identifying areas that if we plant, those are the areas we want to plant trees, or are we saying that those are the areas that will be planted?
I think I'm saying the former, because I think being mandated.
Yeah.
It's a traditional planting was going to be done down that end, this would be the indicative areas, but that's not compelling us to plant anything.
Yeah, that's what I was just trying to clarify, because that comes back to Lara's concern about open space. You're saying that if there's going to be new planting, those will be the areas, new planting, those will be the areas that will be the most appropriate within the park.
Through the chair, we should view these as enabling plans, not requiring, and that it also doesn't eliminate other potential uses, they just have to go through a different process.
Okay, and the only other thing, I'm with Simon, I think it's a good plan, I think a lot of work's gone into it. It sets a future expectations, and there is an issue about delivering these expectations, but at least we have a goal now to be working towards. The only minor thing I would just come back to, I've raised this before, is the path at the eastern end, which runs along the boundary. There is a clear design line which follows that boundary all the way up to Dawson Street, rather than cutting in through. And if we do go the way you've shown, you will still have people taking that direct design line. That's a very minor concern, but just want to raise that.
Thank you, John Barry.
Yes, just a couple of points I think you touched on this sort of issue that I'm going to elaborate on, and that is the consultation process included a lot of wider community interest groups, but it seemed to leave out the immediate neighbours and the immediate people that live on particular Lismore Street, the daily users of the park, leave out that they were specifically consulted and I think Captain Simon's comment that Mount College were left out in that sort of category as well. So it's certainly, I think, important that when we go through these consultation processes that we spread the net as wide as we can, and certainly the people that are living close to that facility should be consulted. The second thing is, in parallel to the development plan, there is also a parking strategy being undertaken for Wānaka, and during the consultation process, there was, I'm talking for the parking strategy here, there was discussions over the lack of all-day parking for workers that commute to Wānaka, regardless of different modes of transport that are available. People that live in the wider area, like Wānaka and so forth, have to drive to town, and there's a total lack of all-day parking for those workers. And an area that was identified during the parking consultation process was the area at the top of Lismore Street, on Lismore Street, adjacent to Lismore Park. Is potentially an area where downtown workers could park all day and walk down Lismore Street through Motley Lane and be in town within the middle of I sort of wonder whether we're jumping it down a wee bit, approving the development plan, and then the parking strategy may come up with some suggestions that could be incorporated in the development plan for Lismore Park and improve the all-day parking facility.
Do you, and I was privy to an email before that the Parks team and the parking strategy team have been conversing around that.
I did raise it with Jess, and I understand there has been dialogue between the two.
Yeah, they're not operating in silos there. I think there's certainly a role for formalising that parking along where it is at the moment, because it's quite sporadic, isn't it? And even some of the sight lines aren't great. And I think this development plan still allows for the formalising of parking along the perimeter of the reserves, and the decision as to whether it is mostly on the road reserve or comes slightly into the reserve will be down to detailed design, but there is some flexibility there. Is that my understanding around that?
And I believe that's what the reserve management plan directs as well, that that's where the parking will be, and the formalising the road reserve car parking, but that's certainly the direction that the development plan. So as we go on page 14 of the development plan, the attachment, that's the plan that shows the car parking. But it's essentially around the perimeter of the reserve and along the sides of the reserve.
Yeah. So we have got the ability to probably create a better use of that space, probably make it safer. Is that what you're sort of aiming at, Barry?
Mr. Chair, in the heart of Wānaka plans and the public consultation of those documents, it's very clearly identified those parking areas that were highly suggested by the community feedback in both Mooney Lane and along Lismore Park.
The current version, sorry, of the parking strategy doesn't, from my review of it, doesn't identify car parking areas specifically. So through the development of this plan, obviously we're governed by the Reserves Act and the primary purpose of those reserves. It does give guidance around what, what we need to focus on, which is the public enjoyment and use of the reserve itself. Obviously there are examples in the district where there are public car parks that act as commuter car parking on reserve land, but certainly with the increasing demand and pressures on our reserves with the growth, our focus is protecting that reserve for the purpose of the reserve. If a all-day commuter car park was something that was presented by council, then we would need to revisit this process, development planning process, and possibly also need to amend the reserve management plan as well.
Through the chair, I think potentially even the reserve status as well, because you know, it could be a local purpose reserve, for instance, to have car parking, a recreation reserve. You can't use wholesale for car parking that's not associated with the use of the reserve, so we can't, you know, there's a much tougher process to, you know, not opposed to the principle and certainly the enhancement of the parking along Lismore Street and at the top of Molly Lane, something that we're continuing to progress, but the wholesale use of reserve, recreation reserve for parking that's not associated with reserve is quite a tricky issue for us.
I think to establish a new one in an existing reserve, there are examples that, you know, historically exist.
Yeah, that potentially unlawful in some cases. Not unlawful, but questionable.
Just with the chair, I think the biggest thing is the formalising of the car parking. I know with my staff, they know that there's somewhere to park, that's where they go. And the problem with the moment is that you end up with cars parking parallel or not, and cars and trailers and that sort of thing. So there's potential for it to be, the parking here is far better used without even going into the reserve, just by simply formalising and putting the curb walls and the curves and markings on it.
I would also say that that isn't anywhere near capacity, so there is all-day parking available there on Lismore Street now, and whether if businesses chose to, or employees chose to use it and the demand was there, then that would drive the need for change. At the moment, it is never at capacity. So, you know, that is free all-day parking, it is available to businesses today, and they should be using it.
I'm going to go to Quinton and we'll come back around for this. Do you want anything else other than you've talked about parking? Anything else? Council, you talked about neighbourhood consultation, parking, anything else you could add?
Well, I guess the only other thing I'd like to add is with the intensification proposals that are before us, even though we're not at capacity now, intensification does occur in that downtown area. The need is going to be way greater than this year. So.
Thank you, Gary. Quick.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be brief, but you know, once again, this was the catalyst for this process to be undertaken was actually the rebuild of the bike park, and really to solidify what the structure of the park, notwithstanding that was approved slightly out of step, but it was to acknowledge that the bike park's going to be there, that you know, it was going to expand in the future, that it wasn't going to conflict with other uses like frisbee golf. We had the schools to pool running through the middle. We wanted to sort of cement that into place as being, you know, deal with some of those other issues that were raised in the management plan. So there was a catalyst for it. Once again, the development plan is not always the best term. I think we might look at that in the future because it really is a framework for, you know, future management and how we make those decisions. I'm pleased that the perimeter park, was one of the feedback I gave, was the perimeter parking has been acknowledged on this plan, albeit possibly would have liked to see a little bit more on the perimeter. They've been acknowledged as approximate new parking spaces. It's not entirely accurate because some of them are already existing. in general, reinforce the point that was made before, that open space is absolutely valuable. I've heard people say, we need to do something with Lismore Park, and I'm saying, well, what do you mean it's doing it? It's open space, it's breathing, it's one of the few remaining parts of the terminal moraine that actually is legible, because it's got all the humps and swallows in it, and I want that to stay that way because it's really cool. It's really unique. You know, there's people who spend billions of dollars building a golf course to look exactly like
Are you advocating a golf?
no, but in terms of,
It is.
you know, that's, it's doing exactly what it should be doing, and we need to protect that in the future.
Thank you. Being around the table, heard various things, and I think staff have taken on some of the themes around this. I'm getting the sense that overall there might be a little bit that's more around the execution and implementation, which we will have the chance to have more reflection on and input into as the plan actually comes to fruition. Is there anything else wants, because I'm going to do information that's adopted, but I'll go around. Anyone else? John, you want to say something else?
Yeah, we probably support Chris in terms of the formalisation of that parking on the southern end by Heritage Street, because there are issues there with cars parking blocking the footpath or parking blocking the footpath. So the formalisation of that parking on both sides of that road is really key as part of this plan.
The only comment I would make is that, particularly in Lismore Park, is that there's a lot of people that are quite passionate about it, and as things progress through this, they will come to us and go, did you know this was happening? And if we do, then we can say yes, and we thought about it, and we can have that conversation. Whereas if we're kept in the dark and we don't know what's happening, then they'll go, bloody council got the process.
So no one ever says that.
It's really useful, even just to be informed about the next process that's going to happen, whatever it is, and then we can say, yes, we did know about that, and we've talked about it, so that kind of heads up, if you like, is very useful.
I'd like to move that we note the contents of this report and that we adopt the Lismore Park Reserve Development Plan. Do I have a seconder for that? John's seconding that. John Robinson. Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favour? 4. Anyone against?
I'm still against.
Understand? You voted for Barl and Linda against, so that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Just to be happy, you can do it now by text.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add, I know Mountford College were invited to the early stages of consultation. I'm not sure what happened there, but absolutely they've been involved in further detail design.
It's a great project for a second class, so I hope you all get
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Tree policy. So the tree policy has been with us for a while now, and I understand that that's passed by council, so we are just noting the contents of the tree policy and giving the ability to have any further input before it goes up the chain. Is that right? Yeah. I'll throw it over to the floor while we're going around. Is there anyone who's got observations, comments, questions around the tree policy 2023?
Is there an assurance that we, QLDC, will adopt the tree policy and practices within the own Parks Department?
Yes, Mr. Chair, well, you guys know Lee, he's our consultant arborist. We've a new arborist, in-house arborist, who's recently started. He can talk to that in more specific detail, but we are following it. Yep. Absolutely in the Parks Department, and we want to ensure that the entire council with the practical works is aware and following the tree policy too.
And particularly the planting times of the years, David?
And this season was slightly late for procurement reasons, but yeah, absolutely. We're actually more focused on the autumn, which is what should be. But yeah, absolutely.
So what was it? Exceptions this year, plant, because I know that was, if you're cognizant that it was planting down outside of the window,
Yeah.
it really threatens the viability of the tree. So you acknowledge anything, but.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, it did happen. And we had planned to start sooner, but yeah, contractors and stuff like that, so it's slightly delayed, and there was a big focus to put the water in, and a lot of the trees were pulled through. Initially they didn't look great, but the vigour was still in the trees. But yeah, we were going to be planting more in autumn, which was always a plan. We just wanted to get this kind of last year's budget out of the way, etc. But we've got a 10-year sort of plan to continue planting, with autumn being the main trunk. We'll still plant in spring, but autumn by end of October, all trees should be in by then. Yeah.
With all respect, it was actually 2023, exactly the same thing happened.
Yeah.
So that's why my assurance to adopting this policy, not only within our Parks Department, but within the development and the developers that are planting it this time of year, that are, too hard to see, and it's who then enforces it, and how is it managed within your Parks Department. If you've got a developer planting 200 trees outside of within a subdivisional development, within being, say, the week before Christmas, what happens? How is that actually met? How is that implemented from the policy that states, well, you're not in those times of the year?
I know, I'm not sure developers how, we choose species and location, but yeah, we need to put some guidelines around time and around that. And also follow up. There's a maintenance agreement, so when we take these handover from developers, if trees die, they have to replace. So there is that, at the end of that handover period.
Within their own code of practice, isn't it? It's like within their subdivisional, if they've got their resource consent within their own code of practice, they are referred to the tree policy document. So it's not much point having this policy document over here, but actually, in reality, this is all just happening, and I'm just trying to understand how it's actually monitored and enforced.
I think through each year, obviously the pressures of subdivisions and the sheer volume of them, and the goal is 224C, they won't hold out with planting season. So perhaps the most, obviously we have consent conditions that we put forward on those trees and plans that we sign off. They don't currently require a planting season, but we could put that in the maintenance agreement that if any of those trees expire, so I think we face severe pushback if we did hold up those processes for planting seasons, but we could have it in our maintenance agreement that any trees that didn't survive need to be replaced in those required planting seasons. I think that would be the most pragmatic way to address that particular issue.
So John, I'll go John and
I may have missed it, but is there any timescale with which the trees that are removed must be replaced? Because this is an issue that we've faced before, that so many trees will be chopped down, they wanted 3 years to replant them. I couldn't see anything here that said it should be done within the next season or within a short period.
Yeah, it's one thing we did have in this update was that we can request that trees are planted before removals take place. This will put a lot more ownership and responsibility on the person. That's a big change in here, which will really help for that. But there is no guidelines or timing outside of that. Some tree removals we approve, but trees may not be removed for 12 months or beyond. So again, that's something we can pinpoint in the application process. So we'll put something like these need to be planted in a certain period.
Certain period after it being removed.
Yes, absolutely. And then there's also the maintenance agreement period beyond that, where like one golf course, for example, we want to make sure those trees continue to survive, and so we check in on those on an annual visit maybe. Those are things we're kind of working through in terms of resource of that. Yeah.
I think we've done John through the construction works is also a factor we need to, it might be 2 years construction, so but we can condition the approval to the nearest practical planting season.
Well, thank you.
Just a comment, sometimes we see it's the crossover between the policy actions under the policy and actions under the tree maintenance program. Sometimes groups go through a process through the policy, and all of a sudden you see down the road a lot of trees come in, and I guess tree maintenance program. So I'm just saying, let's be aware of that, because it's the public view of what they see going on, and sometimes maybe a bit of communication required to say, okay, those trees are coming out because of safety or maintenance program. The other one that I know, it's a big, some of the older parts of town, even on our road reserves, I guess from way back in history, we've got some very big trees. And I know in here you talk about view shafts, not a reason for taking the tree down. I guess it's sort of a safety, but that's why sometimes though you think, is that being too hard? Just saying you can't take a tree out because it's blocking a view for a whole half a subdivision.
Through each year, we just need to draw the line somewhere, and the vast majority of our applications when we first renewed the policy was to remove trees for views, and sometimes they hadn't been established, and the challenge,
So is there any, so for example, if there's a big old tree somewhere and, it could argue it's become a safety issue or whatever, is there some, in the implementation of the policy, is there some pragmatism applied to some of that?
That's very clear around removal of trees for views, the criteria, but safety obviously is.
The other one, just from my education too, I've talked about topping of trees, I think over the years it's bad for trees, but I've seen a lot of trees topped, especially on the rural areas, poplar trees particularly, they seem to, they thicken out, they become a really nice hedge. So is there any real problem with doing that?
It becomes like a maintenance, so if you top the tree and you want the view back, or you might be like an annual visit, and our maintenance period at the moment is 3 years, and so it's just more of a cost than a time to do that, and you may shorten the tree's lifespan over time, but a common like forest heights and Clutha area, obviously that's more about the wrong species in the wrong place to begin with, so we need to address that. But from an average point of view, if you did allow that tree to grow high, you could then clear the lower branches and see through the trees. That, if you continue topping it, you got like pancakes everywhere and the great maintenance. So there is like London Plains, you see in Alexandria where they are pollarded. It can be managed like that, but that's an annual kind of process really. So in terms of policy, there's a blanket kind of no, but there may be some cases where species dependent wise you could top a tree, but it's generally not good practice, and it's only short term benefit before that issue happens again. Really. So it's not. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just one quick point. And I made this previously, that is there a possibility to strengthen the vandalism component prior to coming to council? Because this is an area that I saw as an opportunity, and an area that we've seen quite a lot of issues in the last 2 or 3 years.
I've been working with reinforcements on that, and alongside that we've been using a tool to value the tree to find out what that value of that tree would have been. So it's all coming together a little bit, but it is a personal gain goal and within parks is to kind of like, let's see some more action for this, and we've been working with the enforcement team, some internal lawyers, just to kind of see how we can get something together to help us do that in the future in terms of
just need to add some strength to the enforcement side of it regarding breach of policy, because it's sort of fairly light in there at the moment, particularly around poisoning and illegal entering parking and stuff like that.
Very good. Okay, we're not passing the motion, but we are noting the contents of the report. So again, I'm sure you'll be looking forward into this one being signed off for the April at the council meeting. Would anyone like to move that the contents of this Tree Policy 23 report be noted? Linda's going to move that. Anyone like to second that? I'll second that. Simon. So we're just noting the contents of the report. All those in favour? Anyone against? Carried. Not going anywhere.
Okay, I'm very smart today.
They did actually your report. Thank you very much for being succinct with those answers. And well done for catching those. Very good, Jim. So you're still here. We might let you go for the Chair's report, but in the meantime, we've got some reserves to the west in Wānaka. We've got 2 at Orchard 2, 1 at Orchard Road, 1 at Mount Iron Junction. We've sent out the information, and we've had quite a lot there. We've got the maps and everything. Anything you want to add?
I'm happy to answer questions.
I won't go around the table, but Lyle, what's up?
Just a quick question. Interesting, the maintenance period, it used to be, I'm pretty sure it used to be 5 years now, and one of them was 2 years, and one of them was 3 years. They seem to be all over the place.
Yes, through you, Chair. This is a legacy developers agreement that was signed 2016 or something, I think. So that's why that one is different to our standard maintenance period, which I believe is 3 years.
3 years, yeah. It used to be 5 years.
Yeah, so that's why they differ on these reports.
Alright, thank you.
John?
Just a quick question on the Mount Iron one. The road terminates at the Park Close Road title. Is that doc managed to say? Do you know?
I believe it is.
Probably would, isn't it?
I would have thought so.
I believe it is. I think that road was closed and tied into the reserve.
That's just, if it's not, potentially it can go anywhere.
But we will be taking ownership of that, won't we?
Yeah.
So it's just for a period, and it will, with the transfer from dock to QLDC, the whole now, I presume that will put that.
As long as it is currently part of the dock, the state.
Yeah, I don't think I'm changing anything.
I believe it is, I think they just hold property boundaries, and I know on the survey plan it's a Park Close Road, so it's closed road, presumably done.
Yeah, it's just who was passed due when it was closed, something like that. But the assumption that it's dock, then it's not a problem.
As I understand it, DOC won't administer any land around Mount Iron once that.
Yeah, no, but it's got, I mean,
Yes, it already
it's
has.
got now, not a private owner. That's all right.
Any other questions around to reasonably straightforward?
And I've made this comment before, but, you know, we continue to struggle with the structural connections, so that Orchard Road, you know, clearly there's going to be a path through it, which is great. The path doesn't really connect very well to other things, and
And we're talking about Iron's one, or we
Orchard Road one. So the Pembroke Terraces is what it's called, I think, the other subdivision. That the original plan to have along the sort of northeastern boundary of that development has sort of fell away, and the same with the Tussock Rise stuff. So the connections aren't particularly strong, and you know, if you look at one of those subdivision plans, remains, I think, a fairly poor example of integrated development. And I know it's not on the parks team, but it's a comment that I'll continue to make because we continue to get poor integration, and this block is one of the worst examples of integrated development in the entire district.
We are creating likely for a future generation, I think, because they somehow have to unbuild it at some stage. But I know that that's not the purpose of this, but we will continue to that connectivity and access and future proofing that. I just really hope the planning team ups the game there. Anything else around these two road reserves? These two vesting of these reserves for access? Okay, everyone would like to move. So John is moving that we recommend to council vesting the following reserves be approved: one at Orchard Road Holdings, the one from Mount Iron Junction. John has moved that. Anyone seconding that? Chris Hadfield. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Motion carried. Well done, thank you. And I was going to let you go, but I didn't realise there was one more. Almost joined the community board here with such a we do have a request for new underground services easement between two local purposes reserves at Pembroke Park. This is to allow services to go underground between the two reserves to aid a subdivision that is happening there. It's all been detailed. Anyone actually go out and look on site at that? John needs to as well. Jen, you think to add on this one?
I know it's the underground services and that's what
The one thing I wanted to check was, I know that they will remediate that pathway to its current state. I was just wondering, since we're re-outlining these other favour, that they could remediate it to an even better state, and I didn't get the chance to go out there and just see what state it is in at the moment.
There's not a bad part down there, it's the steps all the way down, I think. Pretty sure they wouldn't.
The steps, yep. Okay.
That could be a mean.
Well, we we are doing something huge right here, right? And the services go on that, there's no real benefit for the community, there is huge benefit for them. Would anyone like to make any comments, any other observations?
We end up with a pretty unfortunate conflict with the driveway, you know. I mean, there's no other driveways in that area at all. It's a pretty unfortunate outcome for that area, and you know.
Is this related to providing the easement? Are you talking about?
Well, I'm confused as to, I mean, how that's occurred, really, because the access has previously been from behind, has it?
I can comment on that, Mr. Chair. No, the existing lot, the access is actually a right of way road via Beacon Point Road
Sounds like a beach.
to the north. The new access right of way is proposed over the road reserve. It's not
Yeah,
reserved, which is why it's not part of the
but
report.
it's-
We as a team have commented on the wider application to acknowledge that, you know, potential conflict with what's effectively a bike trail, not, you know, a walking trail on a road, needs to be addressed, including construction works as well. So it is being highlighted by ourselves as well. However, it's not reserved, so it will be up to the consent team.
Yeah, I'll just see if it's a fairly unfortunate outcome for that area.
It's outside the, yeah.
It is outside.
It's outside the value thing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make one change then to where we say, I recommend to council that authority to approve final terms and conditions and execute authority is delegated to the General Manager of Community Services, and add comma, who should also consider whether the remediation should be at a better state than current. Okay, so I think that does allow us to do a site visit, and if we do see something there that says actually that step's not as what it should be, I think that can be part of the, I'd encourage, who's the General Community Services? Sorry. You know, that Ken has that ability to say, look, we'd like you to remediate it to a better state. Do you want that, Jane? Any other comments, questions? Very good. Would anyone like to move that we note the contents of the report and we recommend this easement over the two local purpose reserves at Penrith Park in Wānaka? Will you have a stop the clock?
Sorry, go for a quick comment. I just wonder if the amendment to point 5 actually creates a slight conflict with point 3H, where it states that reinstatement should be completed immediately following installation into the satisfaction of the QLDC property team.
So who has the
General
authority?
Manager Infrastructure.
Okay.
So perhaps I wonder if the amendment will flow better there to the satisfaction of QLDC's property team in consultation with the General Manager of Community Services.
Okay, thank you. All that. Okay, so we've got two individuals there, both Ken and Tony. Thank you very much. We're all comfortable with that. So just going back, sorry, team, we'll be back with you in a second. So we'll note the contents of the report for the easement over the two local purposes reserves with the amendment that has just been tabled. Would like to move that? I'll move that. Anyone like to second it?
I'll second it.
I was going to second it. I'm getting nervous about this. All those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Motion carries. And thank you very much. Yeah, really appreciate you stepped in, and so you're not across this, but you've done really well answering the details of things. Really appreciate that. Very good. Right, we're coming to the last item, as we always do for the community board meeting, coming up to 11, and that's the chair's report. Thank you to everyone again for their the members showing engagement and what has been happening for them with the community over the last couple of months. Anyone like to raise anything or highlight anything before we pass this this motion?
Well, Mr. Chair, just to add, what I hear we had subsequent to this was the Other Town Association AGM. And Heather Thorne, who's been a very good chair of that association, doing it for one more year, giving notice that she's not going to do it for any longer. So we've got to drum up some more people from the community. We have got a new, I can't remember her name, but a young lady, Lucy McGregor, deputy chair. So she's a bit of a succession plan, which I think is quite good for an association like that. They're very active. The biggest thing they've got out there is to come up, try to communicate with the community, and they've got a wee bit of money in the bank to come up with some community projects that would enhance that community. So that's their main activity at the moment. They do have visions of a bus shelter, and they were going to fund it. That's also maybe depends on how we go with our talking with our transport strategy people, whether that's the appropriate thing to do. Thank you.
It was a good AGM, well run by Heather. In your report, Linda, you noted that you had been approached by a long-term campus at Glenview Bay about their concerns that the new managers of Glenview Bay or new leaseholders were not going to adhere to some of the requirements of the Overseas Investment Commission reports there, etc. So I spoke with Doug this morning, and we've got a process there for him to submit some specific questions for him to attend the next community board meeting by video link, and then for us to escalate that up to a workshop if required. So just let you know that that's we're not every minutes. Yeah. So thank you for initiating that. Jane, thanks for your because we're just sort of getting the time right as well that's presented. So I'll get you to continue to lead that and via email, so I hope you'll copy this both.
Excellent. Great.
Anything else happening in the community that we need to be aware of? We want to speak to the chair's report. Okay, as it's my report, then I will recommend that the chair's report be moved, and would anyone like to second that? Thank you, Linda. All those in favour? Anyone against? Very good. Thanks for everyone's patience. We're due to finish at 11:30. I could string it out for another 2 minutes, but let's finish at 11:28. And I'll declare the meeting closed. We will be going into a workshop, and the three things we're going to be talking about at the workshop is the update on the Mount Iron